We got up before dawn just to bring you
Top of the morning from beautiful downtown Baltimore.
Hi, the top of the morning.
Hi, top of the morning. The top of the morning to all of you.
Top of the morning.
This is Top of the Morning. I'm Steve Izant. We're in beautiful downtown Baltimore. This morning we're on the USS Constellation. It's a wonderful ship. It's been a little drizzly, a little rainy, but we're undercover, so that's good. Our guest this morning is Craig Swenson. He's a museum educator with the Constellation. It's a great show. You're going to hear him pipe me aboard with his bosun's whistle. A little bit later in the show, you're going to hear the cannon fire. They always do that at noon, weather permitting. So please stay with us. We'll be right back with Craig Swenson, museum educator on the USS Constellation. This is Top of the Morning. I'm Steve Izant. We are in beautiful downtown Baltimore, and this morning it's a little gray, it's a little overcast, but that's okay because we're undercover on the deck of the USS Constellation. Our guest this morning is Craig. Craig's a museum educator, and so the first question, of course, is what does a museum educator do?
Well, a museum educator is going to do, we do a lot of education programs with school groups, scout groups, any tour group that might come through, adult tour groups as well. We do a lot of overnight programs with scout groups, mostly scout groups.
Well, let's back up for just a moment then. If you have a group and they're here for the day or for an hour or two, what does the tour or the education program consist of?
Well, if we have a school group come in, they generally do what we call a powder monkey tour. A powder monkey would have been a ship's boy who would have been on this ship training to be a sailor, and we generally kind of take them through the different steps that would have been involved, the sort of things that they would have done as a ship's boy. What are
some examples that a powder monkey would do?
Well, a powder monkey is going to be called a powder monkey. They're generally, the word monkey comes from, monkey is going to be something that's very small, and they're going to be small because they're young. Powder refers to the fact that one of their chief duties would be, if the ship were in a battle, they would be going down to the powder magazine, which would have been at the absolute bottom of the ship. They would have been bringing up powder charges and shells for the firing.
And how dangerous was that for a powder monkey then?
I mean, if the ship's in a battle, pretty much anywhere you're going to be in danger. So they're going to be running down, running back up, running down, running back up, pretty much the entire length of the battle.
Well, that was 100 years ago. What does a powder monkey today do when you give them the tour on the ship?
Well, they come on board. Depending on the weather and the time, we have different activities that we can do with them. We have Brace the Yards, which is an activity where they learn how to work the sails. We have Anchors Away, which is where we learn how to work the capstan, which is kind of like a old-fashioned crane that works like a large winch, and we would have used that for bringing cargo on board the ship. We actually do a gun drill with some of our guns down below, where they learn what all the steps in firing were. We run the gun in and run the gun back out. And we do also have a gun up here at the bow that we actually do fire.
You actually fire that?
Yes.
With no shell, I assume?
No shell, yes.
Or can you hit that tall building over there if you tried?
If we had a shell, we could hit that building.
You could hit that building?
Yes.
I think I see a couple of holes over there. Maybe somebody did something when you weren't looking?
It's possible.
Craig, Last month at the Top of the Morning show that we had at the top of the World Trade Center, we had Chris Rossum on, the director of the museum here. One of the things that he mentioned is not only is there the ship, but there's a great museum right next to the ship. Can you tell us a little bit about that museum? What's in it?
Well, the ship as itself is sort of a museum. We have lots of interpretive material scattered throughout. There's lots of panels and placards down below that give you information as to history of the ship, the mechanics as far as how the ship worked. We also always have people on board like me who can answer any questions that someone might have about the ship. So it's not something where you're just going to kind of come on and look and say, oh, cool, it's a ship. There's lots of stuff for you to look at and learn.
Before we get to some details about the museum that's right next door to the ship, you said interpretive materials. Give me an idea of what an interpretive material might be here on the ship.
We have audio tours, which is people who've been to museums. A lot of museums have these nowadays. It's like a little thing with a speaker that you carry with you, and as you go through the ship, you're going to get different numbers on placards. And you punch in your number, and it's going to tell you something about what you're looking at.
Okay, that sounds good. So tell us a little bit about the museum that's right next door. What are some of the things that you think are really cool that's in that museum?
Well, the building next to us, which serves as kind of like an entrance to the ship and also has a museum in it, there's the ship's original wheel is in there. Well, there's a wheel in there that dates at least to 1880, so it is possibly the ship's original wheel. There are lots of original artifacts from the ship, things that we can't really put out on the ship because it's, you know, the ship is kind of out in the weather, so things in there that we can keep in a display case, like swords, for example.
Swords. Well, maybe we can see one of those later. To get back for a moment, we haven't talked about the history of this ship. You mentioned that the wheel might be the original wheel from the 1880s, but when was the ship actually commissioned?
The ship was commissioned, well, construction began in 1853, completed in 1854, and she was actually commissioned in 1855.
So did this ship see action in the Civil War then?
She was never in an actual battle. During the Civil War, she actually spent a lot of time in the Mediterranean.
Greg, we've talked a little bit about tours that are available on the ship, but we haven't really talked about the ship's history. When, for example, was the ship commissioned?
Well, construction began on the ship in 1853. She was completed in 1854, and she was actually commissioned in 1855.
Did this ship see any action in the Civil War then? That's right before it started.
Yes, she was never in an actual battle during the Civil War. She actually spent the first couple of years of the Civil War in the Mediterranean, which a lot of people think is odd. But the idea was that
I apologize for the interruption. Okay. It seems a little odd that we were having a Civil War, the biggest thing that ever happened to our nation in that period of time, and she's over in the Mediterranean.
Well, the idea was that the Confederacy had a lot of ships that were harassing U.S. merchant ships, sometimes in the Mediterranean. So this ship was in the Mediterranean to establish a Union presence and to kind of protect our merchant ships, make sure the Confederacy wasn't basically raiding them.
I see. Well, I want to hear more about that, but we've got to take a short break, so please stay with us. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. We were talking about the USS Constellation's role in the Civil War. She started out in the Mediterranean, but did she stay there during the entire time, or did she eventually make it back to the coast?
She eventually made it back to the United States. She was sent to Mobile, Alabama to participate in a large blockade they had down there. But she pretty much got to Mobile, and the Admiral Farragut, who's famously known as being the man who said, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead," during the Battle of Mobile Bay, he pretty much sent her right back because she was a little obsolete at the time. She didn't have a steam engine, and her draft was too deep for the area in which they were blockading. On her way back, she came across a Confederate blockade runner, which was a ship that was especially designed to be fast and slip through Union blockades. And the Constellation attempted to capture her, but she had a steam engine, and Constellation didn't. So they just turned in the direction that the wind was blowing, and there was no other way that we could pursue them.
So interesting. One thing that jumps out at me is you said that she was commissioned in 1853, and the war, of course, started in 1860, 1861. So in that short period of time, she actually became obsolete. She was probably like one of the last big square riggers built then.
Well, this ship was actually the last ship that was built that was not equipped with a steam engine. So the U.S. Navy would continue to build sailing ships, but they were all also equipped with steam engines. This ship was the last one that they built that was not equipped with a steam engine.
Interesting. Craig, I've been sitting here and I've been looking at this very large, what I think you would call a lanyard around your neck.
Yes.
What's at the other end of it?
The other end of it is my bosun's whistle, which was generally used for ceremonial functions and also for kind of getting everyone's attention if need be.
Well, let's see if we can get the attention of our viewers. I don't know how this is going to play, but can you pipe someone aboard or whatever you would do with that kind of whistle? I think I hear a lot of dogs barking somewhere in the distance here. And now, what did you just do? Did you pipe me aboard, or did you send me home, or what was that signal?
That was called pipe the side, which is generally a ceremonial thing, and it is often used for piping dignitaries or high-ranking men aboard.
Okay, and is that hard to learn how to do? How many different signals are there, for example?
There's a lot. I can't tell you an exact number, but in my experience, I haven't found that it's terribly difficult to do it.
Craig, in a couple of minutes, I understand that you're going to fire the cannon, that you do this every day at noon, weather permitting. Tell us a little bit first about what it takes to get prepared to do that.
Well, we're going to be firing what's called a 20-pound parrot rifle. It is up at the bow of the ship. I have to run inside and make a powder charge. We will be just firing a powder charge, as we discussed earlier, and not an actual shell. But I have to get the powder, I have to wrap it up in some tin foil, and then I have to actually set the gun up itself.
So they don't let you use the shells?
Fortunately not.
Unfortunately not. Now, you mentioned you used the term parrot rifle, and yet I assume this is something that's too heavy to pick up. I think of a rifle as something that a person can actually pick up.
Mm-hmm. The actual definition of a rifle is that the barrel of the gun is going to have a series of what's called lands and grooves inside. They're going to form a spiral pattern. They're going to make the projectile that the gun fires spin. Making it spin makes it go further and also makes it more accurate.
Okay, excellent. Well, we're going to have to let Craig go prepare those charges so that we can hear the parrot rifle, which has those spiral grooves, fire in just a moment. So, Craig, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Next time we hear you or see you, I want to hear a big boom. Can you put a little extra charge in the tinfoil this time?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll be back in just a moment. Please stay with us.
Yep. And you see it's got kind of like a corkscrew on the end of it. This is used for removing any debris that might still be in the gun from the last firing. So I'm going to volunteers to help me run this gun back out. I will participate as well because we don't have too many people, but would you like to help me, Lauren? Alright. Oh! That's good, huh? Foil, so that the gunpowder inside is exposed to the air. I'm going to wear earplugs because I'm standing closer to it than everyone else here is, and also because I fire this gun several times a week. No one here has to cover their ears, but if you want to use your palms and not your fingers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my earplugs in. I'm going to look, make sure that our line of fire is clear, there's no boat passing in front of us. I'm going to hook the lanyard into the primer, I'm going to say ready. If you want to cover your ears, that's your cue to do so. Again, you don't have to. And then we're going to fire. Occasionally, like maybe 75, maybe 25% of the time, we'll have a misfire, in which case you'll either hear a pop or you'll hear nothing. If that happens, we'll just try it again. It generally means a bad primer.
Well, that's our show this morning on the USS Constellation. I hope you enjoyed listening to Craig Swenson, the museum educator with the USS Constellation. The rain's finally let up, so we can let Craig go. Hope you enjoyed hearing that cannon fire. If you have a chance, and you haven't been here in a while, you really should come down and see the museum and the USS Constellation. I think you might hear in the background someone else is now being piped aboard. A live demonstration coming up. That's our show. Thanks a lot for watching. I'm Steve Izant.